Hello, everybody, and thanks for joining me here today on Transcendent. Transcendent is a weekly broadcast of San Antonio and Black, White, and Brown. Where here on this program, we take uh, the issues of the day to the next level. The word transcendent means to go beyond normal boundaries. And so our objective is to take the conversation on issues that affect the way you and I live and view those issues from a spiritual plane, view them from another perspective, perhaps in what you've seen in the certainly what you've seen in the news, and even perhaps beyond conversations that you've had with people at your kitchen table or at the in the break room at your job or on the telephone to provide another perspective, an opportunity for another perspective to be gained. SABWB is going through some major upward mobility changes. Thank you guys for joining me today. Also, I see that the numbers are climbing, and I'm very appreciative for that. Would you take the time to invite people on your own social media platforms to today's broadcast? I have a video piece that I'm going to show you at the very early part of this that kind of embodies our subject for tonight. You shall not pass, and we're going to be talking about HR5 and Fix SA and where those things, how they really literally affect, particularly the body of Christ. We are in a time of flux in this country, um, unlike few times in our nation's history. A time of flux, change. Things are, perspectives are changing, and objectives are changing because perspectives have changed. And that moves some people into favorable positions and others out of favorable positions that have been held for a long time. Some of those positions have been fundamentally healthy for the future of the nation that are now in question, and some things that have destroyed nations before historically are now moving into position in this nation. We're at a time when intercessors and prayer warriors must be people who uh, do what it takes in order to see God's hand at work in our nation, and we're going to do something about that here locally in our city and across the face of the nation. And I'm so glad that you have taken the time to join us today here on Transcendent. It is the Facebook live broadcast of SABWB. What is that? What is San Antonio and Black, White, and Brown? Well, if you've been listening to us for any reasonable amount of time, you know that San Antonio and Black, White, and Brown is the number one place where influencers from every race, position, and perspective come together, or they converge, or they assemble for two main purposes. One is to build trusting relationships with each other that will take us into collaborating both on the value and the implementation of principles that shape the culture. So ultimately, this is not talk. Ultimately, this is about putting into motion the things that need to be put into motion in order to shape our culture here in the city of San Antonio. And as San Antonio is shapened, we'll shape metropolitan area after metropolitan area as the nation becomes the beneficiary of our partnership together. So I want to invite you to become our partner. We will officially open our offices on Good Friday, this coming Friday at 9 a.m. An invitation has gone out, and I'm issuing you a personal invitation from me to join us on Friday morning at 9 o'clock at 8023 Vantage Drive in the visitor parking lot. That's the street level parking lot in the visitor area at Callahan Tower. At 9, we're going to meet out there in the parking lot. I'm going to address the group, and there's already people responding. We're so thankful that people are going to be with us in our grand opening experience. And we're going to process up, have a little processional up to the third floor where our offices are. And we want you to tour the SABWB brand new offices and fully functional now. And well, I would say 95% 7% functional now. And we're ready to start this coming Friday, officially beginning the SABWB offices as the place where influencers collaborate to help shape the culture of San Antonio in the direction of people who love the city and love God, want to shape the city. There are people who love the city of San Antonio and who love God and know that God's hand on the city is what will make the city prosper. You know, the scripture says that righteousness exalts a nation, but that not only includes national stances. Righteousness will exalt a state, a city, an enterprise, a family, a person. Righteousness exalts a nation, but sin is a reproach to any people. Sin is to miss the mark. We think that's a religious word. It's not religious in its context. It is actually athletic in its context, namely for archers, those who would use the bow and the arrow. If they use the bow and the arrow and they pull back and they release the arrow and it doesn't hit bullseye, then they have sinned. So the sin, literally, harmatia is a Greek word, and it means to miss the mark. And we don't want to miss the mark and scope of what God has called our city to be and to do. We want to hit that mark, and together we're able to make that happen. So mark your calendars for Good Friday. Start your Good Friday with a good deed of coming to celebrate with us at 9 o'clock in the morning. We're going to process up 3 flights of stairs to our offices. There are elevators in the building, but it's kind of difficult to process up an elevator. So since we're only on the 3rd floor, we're going to process up three flights of stairs and go into our office, have a quick tour there. We'll say a dedicatory prayer to those offices, and then we will initiate the experience, the I Pray experience, which we will do every Friday in our SABWB offices from 10 to 11. And those of you who are coming to be with us live in our grand opening, you are also welcome to stay for our first I Pray experience. It is a Facebook Live and in-person experience, a Facebook Live and in-person, where we gather for that hour from 10 to 11 on Fridays, and we seek the face of God to involve His power in our creative and innovative thinking, and His power of favor when we release activity that ultimately will shape the culture of our city. So you'll hear this line a lot: shaping the culture of our city through prayer and action. You'll hear that line a lot. You'll see it also on our signs and things like that going forward. We have a lot of stuff, hats and T-shirts and all of that. I was going to say paraphernalia, but all of that stuff is coming our way in order to push San Antonio and Black, White, and Brown to the place it needs to be, so that it becomes a power center that can influence how the city flows. And not only in terms of city government, we're actually targeting 5 specific areas. The first of which is the church. There are a lot of pastors and leaders that I have had the opportunity to build relationships with here over the last 35 or 40 years. We have mutual respect one for another. We don't always agree on everything, but we have mutual respect and honor for one another. We're going to build on that respect and honor and come together in terms of our message, the message concerning Jesus. I tell people, this is my spirit, soul, and body shirt that I have on right now. It says, Jesus, Texas, and tacos. I love Jesus with my spirit, Texas with my soul, tacos with my body. So, and this was actually a gift to me. One of our members at Faith Outreach Center International gave that to me as a gift. I like this shirt. So we're going to come together for the church and get all on the same page and do. I'm reading through Dr. Martin Luther King Jr.'s books again. I read through them kind of at the first part of each year, but this year it is something incredibly different. And God has given me some marching orders to bring together the body of Christ in a unique and a powerful way. And I know you will be getting invitations, particularly this week, to some of our pastor friends. At the same time that we'll be praying in the I Pray experience, there'll be a group of 10 pastors that's actually going to come up and join us for that time of prayer this coming Friday. It's going to be awesome. So I highly encourage you to be a part of that. But we also focus not only on the church and gathering church leadership together, but on law and politics, on business, on education, on sports and entertainment. You're going to see SABWB continuing to have a full court press. Before SABWB responded to things in the culture that needed to be addressed, and it solicited the aid of the church to do so. And thankfully, we have been able to do that with some measurable degree of success. And we're humbled by that, because you are the one who make it successful. No one person his mouth is big enough, no platform large enough singularly to make that happen. And the platform of SABWB is growing. You're going to see us all over different types of social media now. Had a breakthrough just today to make that happen. And so thankful for your partnership. But tonight, in this particular broadcast, I want to talk to you about this subject. You shall not pass. And I'm directing that statement not at individuals, but at two bills. One that is on a national plane and the other that is local. HR5 is national, Fix SA is local. Now I want you to just take an opportunity right here, and I want you to just get a piece of paper and a pencil, or your social, your technology, whatever you use. And I want you to take some notes. Save this broadcast today, and go back and listen to it. And I think you will agree with the sentiment of this clip that I'm about to show you. Some of you are, my oldest daughter, Kimberly, and I, we're like movie buddies. We're buddies in a lot of ways, but we're movie buddies for sure. And I came in tonight, just kind of thinking about how I want to present HR5 and Fix SA. And she was helping me come up with a title. And then she said, how about You Shall Not Pass? And I thought, I love it. So I want you to look at this clip from The Lord of the Rings, and I'll be right back right after you see this.
Servant to the secret fire, wielder of the flame of Arnor. The dark fire will not avail you, flame of Udun! Go back to the shadow. Shall not pass!
Now, isn't that just perfect? Isn't that perfect for the description of the perspective that we should take regarding HR5 and Fix SA. I think when we're done tonight looking at some things that are just in print, and I want to guide you to some other material where you can learn. A lot of times we have a perspective on a thing based on either the slant or the lack of information on that thing. We take a position on a thing based on either the slant of information that we have concerning it or on the lack of information that we have concerning it. So in one respect, our job tonight for you is to give you the kind of information you need regarding HR5 and Fix SA. Now, if you were with us on our last broadcast, you know that I had the current president of the San Antonio Police Officers Association, Danny Diaz, on here with me talking about Fix SA. And so I'll go through some of that later, but I encourage you, particularly our partners. One advantage to becoming a partner is because these things are posted on the backside of our website that you can go to and pull down and copy and send. And other material is also back there for our partners. And I again encourage you to become a partner. It's $10 a month. So the $10 is not something that you'll miss. It's in that range so that all of us can get involved and do what we need to do in order to shape our culture and to point it in the right direction. So as I talk about that tonight, both HR5 and Fix SA, you'll be able to conclude that, as Gandalf said, you shall not pass. And the very last thing he said before going into this eternal battle with this thing called a Baal rock. This is he called it an ancient demon. And I want to help you understand something right here. Forces are at work in our nation which did not start yesterday, and they have in many respects come to a build-up point. They have accelerated. Their power has been magnified over the period of time that they have been in motion. I have a book in my library called The Naked Communist, and it is the agenda of the communists against the West, and lays out their strategy. When I say the West, I'm talking about Western civilization, and lays out their strategy as to how, without armed conflict, they will take the West down. This was written back in 1958, and their details are very clear about how they want to get that done. And if you have a copy of that book, or I encourage you, just go Google it. Google The Naked Communist. It was printed in 1958, but you'll see that the material in it people have been working on before 1958, and they've come up with a plan that they actually wrote in a book and put it out in print for you and I to learn from it and grow from it, and to see, when we start to see certain things appear in the culture, where it's actually going. But there was another movement that rose up in 1964. It's the landmark legislation led by the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther, a pastor. Yes, a pastor. Dexter Avenue Baptist Church. Pastor Martin Luther King Jr. raised his voice, and he also raised up people around him who had the same affinity to break the hold of oppression that had taken hold of the people of Montgomery, Alabama, and all over the South, and all over the slave-owning southern areas of our country, and even the oppressive slave-owning areas in the North as well. But God used him to raise up a voice and to raise a standard that literally broke slavery's oppression off of Black America, and allows me to do what I'm doing today. You and I, with if we are so-called African Americans in this country, we are standing on the shoulders of people like Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. As I'm reading again through his 7 books that he wrote, the one that's most impacting me this time around is his own autobiography. He was 39 years old when he died, but he'd written 7 books in that time frame, and they are filled with nuggets of what uh, a people who feel disenfranchised and oppressed and marginalized, what they can do with those feelings. Right now, African Americans, we have submitted ourselves to become notorious for allowing others to jerk us around because of the pain that those feelings have both inflicted on us and left upon us. People know how to jerk us around by them, say certain things to incite us, get us emotionally stirred up, and cause us to literally end up fulfilling the strength of the oppressor on us, because they have deluded and seduced us with a message to believe one thing when actually another thing is taking place. And that's in flux right now too. All of that is taking place in our nation, and a lot of it is driving what I'll get to later called Fix SA. But I want to go to first. I want to go to some literature on this HR5. In a minute, we're going to go to commercial, and I'm going to come back and deal with some of those things that are happening. I want to read it to you line by line, so to speak. I'll synopsize it, but what is contained in HR5. And I'll go to commercial with this saying: if HR5, which is passed out of the Congress, passes in the Senate, if HR5 that is passed out of Congress, a democratically controlled Congress, if it will pass the Senate, it will mark, and please mark my words here, the passing of HR5 will mark the time of legal persecution of the church in the United States of America. In other words, you cannot be a Bible-believing Christian in a land where HR5 is in force and not suffer persecution for it. It is impossible. I'll prove that when I come back from this commercial. Stay right there. And while you're there, please go to your own social media platform and invite others to come on with us in this discussion that we're going to have tonight. All right, I'll be right back. Hello, everyone. I'm Charles Flowers, your host for Transcendent. Transcendent is SABWB's online weekly broadcast, aired here on Influence's platform. Join me and other key leaders from various pillars of influence which shape the culture of San Antonio for innovative and strategic dialogue. Each week, we will address core community values and principles that need to be restored and re-implemented into our culture of our great city. This may often necessitate identifying where these values and principles are being compromised and reflecting on the damaging impact that such actions may have if left unaddressed. But ultimately, we want to take the conversation beyond ordinary limits, exceed the normative boundaries, and implement bold, time-tested principles across the pillars of influence in our city, which will result in the positive transformation of the culture. I look forward to visiting with you each week here on Transcendent. And I do thank you for visiting with me each week right here on Transcendent, and I highly encourage you to make this a part of your weekly listening on your social media platforms. Save it, share it with others, because there's very valuable information that we're giving out, particularly if you're a pastor or if you're a ministry leader here in our city. Just a different perspective on some things that you need to consider, perhaps different than what you've heard, that needs to be considered regarding these things, so that you can be informed, and you therefore can inform the people that you have the privilege to serve as their pastor or their ministry leader. So I want to go into first talking about why HR5 shall not pass. And do you remember when you saw that little clip at the end, when this bell rock, this ancient demon, was falling into the abyss, that whip came up and grabbed the foot of Gandalf and tugged him over the edge, and his last thing that he said was, "Run, you fools." And I want to say to you, run to the polls. Run to the polls, because that's where the battle is going to be won. That's what's going to be won right there. We discover later, of course, that through that battle, Gandalf was not destroyed. He actually came back more powerful. And and there's an opportunity for us uh, to move ahead. HR1 is on the horizon. I'm not talking about HR1 tonight. I'm talking about HR5. HR5 is called the Equality Act. HR5 is referred to as the Equality Act. Uh, I want you to think about just a minute. Because a party, the Democratic Party, and please, when I say Democratic Party, don't get your feathers ruffled. If these things were coming from the Republican Party, I would be saying the Republican Party. It just happens to be coming from the Democratic Party. It dominates the Congress, and they're putting out stuff like this. And many of you voted for it, so don't get your feathers ruffled over it. Now, let the blinders fall off of your eyes, perhaps, and be able to see that the people that were put in office, and not all of them legally. Listen, when I say some things to you folks, those things are not things that everyone has heard yet, but it will be broadcast. And I'll tell you this just as a predecessor to talking about HR5. The things that were done in the 2020 elections, both at the presidential election level and down ballot, it's coming to the light. I know that because I know some people who are working in it. And the numbers and the data that was suspected, now the drill down has happened, and the data is now coming forth to validate all of that. And it is going to be some landmark, shocking stuff. How it will transform the political landscape, both locally and nationally, is going to be tremendous, particularly the impacts in 2022 in the next series of races. But the adjustment, the adjustments that is going to need to be made as a result of it is going to be quite significant, to say the least. These things that are on their way forward now for certain things to be exposed, and many people have been praying for the right kind and right level of exposure. We will do a piece on HR1. HR1 changes the landscape of things, but tonight I want to talk to you about HR5, which is called the Equality Act, and I want to talk to you about Fix SA. So let's start our discussion with talking about HR5 first of all. HR5 is called the Equality Act, and I made a statement before going to commercial. My statement was, you cannot live in a country where HR5 is in force. You cannot live in a country as a Bible-believing Christian where HR5 is in force and not suffer persecution. So I said to you, and I will say again, that the passing of HR5, if it passes the Senate, and there's some doubt as to whether or not there's enough votes in the Senate to pass it, even among Democrats, because they see not all Democrats are in the far left socialist wing of the Democratic Party, where you will find organizations like BLM and others. And BLM has encased itself in the pain of Black people to the degree that they'll hide their socialistic agenda within the pretense of caring for the afflictions of Black people. And yet Black organizations now, like those in Ferguson and around the country, where BLM has come in and profited off of the pain of those Black communities, and have not come forth with any funds to help community initiatives in those same areas. Now those Black leaders are starting to stand up against BLM and say, you came in here and got all this money on the basis of our pain, and we haven't seen a dime of it. All of that is now beginning things are starting to unravel. But if I can use another movie analogy, Aladdin, you remember? It's unraveling fast now, boys. And there are things that are unraveling in this scenario that you'll be able to see plainly with your eyes. The prophets of God, they look like fools now because they have said one thing and another thing has eventuated, and people have written off the prophetic and all of that. But I would remind you that the scripture says that the church itself is built on the foundation of the apostles and prophets, Jesus Christ himself being the chief cornerstone. Don't too quickly dismiss a prophetic utterance. I know that people are quick to do that, particularly when things don't come as we anticipate that they would come and unfold like we thought they would unfold, that we dismiss both the message and the messenger and claim to ready stone them, and claim that they're false prophets and whatnot. I'm not ready to go there. I am not ready to write off things that God has said, and how he's doing it. Of course, is not the way any of us anticipated it, but we know something. I never made a prophetic claim. I did make a claim of my faith, and my faith is still intact. Not that the president will be coming back into office again. That may never happen. But I do know that the move of God is still at work in the land, and that some things that have been done secretly and done horribly are being brought to light. I do know that. I do know that when that happens, and as that happens, people will begin to see that no one is indeed above the law. We like to hear that now, and we would love to think that notion is true. However, there have been some who have operated well outside of the law because they have made the law. And when they make the law, they have the opportunity to operate outside of it. Unlike God, God makes a principle, and God chooses to channel his omnipotence through the principles that he's established to provide you and me with an opportunity to come to know him in that way. But God is not men, and men are not God. Men make a law, and they will seek to operate outside of it, serving their own convenience, no matter what level of inconvenience that it may cost you and me. So I want to take you now to a little talk tonight. First on HR5, and I say again that you and I cannot live in a nation where HR5 is in force and not be under persecution. What is HR5, or the Equality Act as it's called? The Equality Act is an attempt to amend the landmark legislation of 1964, which Dr. Martin Luther King and a group of others forged through. And in the middle of it, passing, of course, the then President John F. Kennedy was killed. And what to do with what Dr. King and others had brought to bear landed in the lap of a racist, LBJ, Lyndon Baines Johnson. But because such momentum had been gained by Dr. King and others, he could not ignore that legislation, and he would have plunged the country into another civil war because so much had been, or I'll say a civil disturbance of some type that would have been of significance, great significance, both in the nation and in the nations of the world. They understood that the powder keg they were sitting on, because black leaders and others, but largely black leaders, had suffered at the hands of fire hoses and attack dogs and at the end of the billy club of police, and all of it had profoundly oppressed and depressed the people to the point where they decided in Montgomery, Alabama, that they were not going to take it anymore. And God sent a leader, a man who spent 21 of his 39 years educating himself. As Dr. King, who said about the African American church experience, he said, if we had as much religion in our minds and hearts as we did in our feet and hands, we could change the world. Yes, Dr. King said that. If we had as much religion in our minds and hearts as we do in our feet and hands, we could change the world. What was he saying with all of that? He was saying that the religious experience is not all tied up and is not all culminated in emotions. And we are an emotional people, and emotions came from God, and emotions are not evil, but emotions were never meant to lead. They were meant to follow. Emotions are fuel to follow. They are not forgers to lead. And so when we get tied up emotionally, we can also be easy recipients of misinformation because our emotional strings start to be played with. Um, I- I'm going to just go a little further with you on this subject before we go to commercial, and I'll come back. But I want to just remind you that that landmark legislation of 1964 should not, African Americans should hold the civil rights movement as something holy. Yeah, I said holy. Why? Because it was led by a pastor who was led by God to break oppression off of African American people. We should see what Dr. King and others did as a holy moment in this nation, and we should treat it as something holy. But what has happened is we have allowed, and I want you to know that walking right beside Dr. King in the away from the shot of the camera was a homosexual man. Uh, didn't push his homosexuality. He didn't demand some equality. Later in life, he did. Uh, but Dr. King was not one who would use the platform to gain this holy ground that he was gaining uh, in the civil rights movement that protects race, color, national origin, religion, and sex. Now, that's going to be important for you to remember. Race, color, national origin, religion, and sex. Those were the 5 categories that this landmark legislation in 1964 gained for us in America. And in so doing, in passing the civil rights movement, it made illegal anyone keeping African Americans out of a restaurant, out of being served, out of all of those things that they were denied before, legally denied under Jim Crow, denied access to those things. Uh, that landmark legislation made it illegal for business owners and so forth to keep us out because of the color of our skin. Now, this particular bill, HR5, seeks to ride on the coattails of this holy movement of the civil rights movement and put on par with race and color and national origin and religious beliefs and sex, that is sex with male and female, because it targets this word sex. HR5 targets this word sex to add it to the protective classes of the 5 that I just named, to add to it sexual orientation and gender identity as a protected class also. Now that clashes directly with the religion, and so those two things, either one is going to rule the day or the other. There is no middle ground there. Because of a religious belief, if I am a Judeo-Christian and I believe that homosexuality is an abomination unto the Lord, just like many other things are an abomination to the Lord. But and some things that are in our own lives is an abomination to the Lord. So it's not that the homosexuality and that sin is, like its own super class of sin. There are many things that are degrading to the human experience. There are many things that are degrading to the family, the human family. There are many things that are degrading to the moral set. Homosexuality is one of those things that are. But if I bring homosexuality, lesbianism into a protected class, and there is no exemptions for that, which exist in HR5. There are no exemptions for religious beliefs. So you have those 5 categories of which religion is included in it. And now you add to that sexual orientation and gender identity. And in the regulation itself, it points out that there is no exclusion based on another act called the Religious Freedom Act. There is no exclusion that you cannot use RFRA as RFRA is the the Freedom Restoration Reformation Freedom of Religion Act. You can't use that to say you won't comply with the Equality Act. I'm going to go down line by line with you, and we'll start that detailed unpacking of HR5 when we come back from this commercial. Stay right there, and while you're there listening to the commercial, let other people know on this platform that some things are being said that they definitely need to hear and be a part of. All right, I'll be right back right after commercial. Hello, everyone. I'm Charles Flowers, the founder of San Antonio in Black, White, and Brown, also known as SABWB. SABWB is the premier leadership space where influencers from every race and position and perspective converge to build relationships and collaborate on the implementation of principles that shape the culture. SABWB is your voice speaking aloud for integrity, for justice, and transparency and truth in our city. SABWB is your platform for collaboration leading to impact and transformation. SABWB is your presence in the marketplace of ideas in business and politics and education, sports, entertainment, health and wellness, media, and the church. SABWB needs your partnership as we together transcend the boundaries of race and class and build a kingdom culture here in San Antonio. Partnership is only $10 a month, easy enough for all of us to participate. Many of us doing a little will have major impact in our city. To partner, go to sabwb.org or text SABWB space your gift to 84321. Thank you in advance for joining the transformation of our city. So yeah, we hit the ground running with the staff. And staffs don't work for free. They have to be paid. We have an executive director and we have a technological expert also. Your partnership just helps that office focus every day on issues like the ones that I'm bringing forth and those other 4 areas as well. We're not a politically active organization exclusively. We will do political things because politics touches us and therefore we must touch it. But we're not confined to that. You'll hear about CityQuake and you'll hear about some other things that we want to collaborate on for the spiritual health of our city as well as its political health. And I can't wait till we start talking sports and entertainment and bring some figures before you, some personalities that will help shape our culture here in the city of San Antonio. And that way with education and business, we're going to reach all of those areas and keep massaging it every day until we're on the same page, and together we'll shape the culture of our city in a direction that's healthy for everybody. So I was telling you about HR5, the Equality Act, and again, its defense is in its name, right? So who wants to voice anything against equality? It's like in 2013 in the city when the non-discrimination ordinance was placed in our city. It was not written by city officials. It was written by the Human Rights Commission, and the Human Rights Commission sent it out to specific geographical areas in the country in order to lead the country in that direction. There is a strategy that is at work. What I want to convince you of today is that there is a strategy at work, and a part of that strategy is to chum the waters of a city or to chum the waters of a state with certain things that gets people all riled up and in a feeding frenzy when they don't understand that chumming of the water is actually a part of a bigger, more sophisticated layered plan to lead the nation in a certain direction. And I want you to know that that's happening. And what's chumming the waters right now is on the heels of the deaths of George Floyd and Breonna Taylor and the list goes on. Of those who have fallen victim to the hands of people, police officers and others that have treated them illy. In fact, we're in the time frame right now when the officers Chauvin, I think Chauvin, something like that is his last name, who held his knee on the neck of George Floyd until he suffocated and died. His trial is going on right now. And so that trial is also another flashpoint to push this whole, um, uh, in the case of San Antonio, Fix SA, and defund the police department and hit them where it hurts, hit them in the money pocket and all of that. That's not the way to go about that. Reform in certain areas is certainly needed. Defunding is not needed. Defend, not defund. Reform, not refuse. We have to get our language right. We have to get our objectives right. We have to get our information right. And I'll come back to Fix SA in a minute. So let me go back to HR5 now. HR5 is the Inequality Act, and its defense is in its, or it's actually the Inequality Act, but it's called the Equality Act. I had a presenter in our last SABWB mixer, which happened on the 25th of March. Her name is Gina Johnson. Gina has been on this broadcast with me a number of times, and we have just before the 2020 elections, we came on and just kind of unpacked what was then called the Biden-Sanders agreement. It's a lot of socialist ideologies and agendas that we knew was going to drive the Biden administration, and did our best to alert you, the public, to it so that you could have some knowledge of it. Gina has come in on the 25th of March and did an excellent job at unpacking the Equality Act. And we will go back, circle back, as Jen Pansky likes to say, Jen Psaki. She likes to say circle back, and I almost don't like saying circle back now because of that. But we will circle back to HR1 and give a debrief on that as well. But tonight, HR5, the Equality Act. It seeks to ride on the coattails of the civil rights movement. And as I said, the civil rights movement, God used a pastor, Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., to lead that movement along with other pastors in his city, Reverend Abernathy and others that pastored churches. They raised up their voice together, and they got together with some legal professionals. And this is why SABWB knows that it's not just the church that has to come on board. The business sector has to, the legal and political sector has to, the sports and entertainment have to. And we're just going to keep working it until God gives us the victory to shape the culture of our city in the direction that God wants it to go. So as these people got together in the city of Montgomery, Alabama, they began to raise their voice, and they did something that I just described to you as a holy thing. The civil rights movement was a holy act. And what's been now since the days of Jesse Jackson, his bid for presidency, equated the plight of the homosexual and the lesbian to be the same as the African American or the minority in this country. They are not the same. They are far from the same. I wrote a divorce decree several years ago, which I read on the steps of City Hall here in the city of San Antonio, announcing the divorce between the civil rights movement and the LGBTQ movement, citing irreconcilable differences. There are differences that are stark. But when you can prick the emotions of people, you can feed them misinformation and make them buy into something that certainly is not what should be bought into. And so that movement has sought, the LGBTQA plus movement has desired to ride on the coattails of the civil rights movement. And we as Black Americans should not let it happen. We should run to the polls. So let me just go through a couple of these things with you now, which the Equality Act seeks to do in terms of amending the civil rights movement. It passed in the United States House of Representatives, and Joe Biden and Kamala Harris have made clear that their intent is to pass this bill. It's now pending in the U.S. Senate. The only thing that stops it from becoming law is what happens to it in the Senate. And they want to redefine. Here's a couple of things I want to point out. They want to redefine gender for male and female to include sexual orientation and gender identity, and they become a protected class as those five. But it's important that you understand what that amendment will do. Therefore, sex would no longer be defined as it has been for millennia now, as the objective biological reality. The objective biological reality. If you have male parts, you're a man. If that's about biological reality. If you have female parts, you're a woman. That's the biological reality. It wants to change that, and that has existed since the dawn of human history on the planet. And now in this age, a force, and it is a demonic dark force. It's an ancient force. It's the reason I showed you that clip that has come down the line, that is seeking to now change that ancient, well-held and well-understood definition of sex to include sexual orientation and gender identity, and make it a protected class like the color of my skin or national origin or religious beliefs and whatnot, and that male and female sexual definition as well. It wants to amend that to include sexual orientation and gender identity. It will force faith-based organizations to hire employees who do not share their beliefs. Owners and employers of virtually all establishments open to the public would have to ensure that hiring policies, dress codes, codes of conduct, promotions, disciplinary actions do not treat someone differently because they are they're perceived to be lesbian, gay, bisexual, or transgender. Now, I'm telling you, this is what is hanging in the balance. You cannot be a Bible-believing Christian if HR5 becomes the law of the land. You cannot be a Bible-believing Christian and not suffer persecution under HR5. You will, and these forces will align themselves very quickly with notable churches to bring them into litigation graveyards that they'll never get out of, and they can't sustain it, and it will break the church down and pollute the church, causing it to have to adopt to belief systems and ideologies which the scriptures declare is not a part of the church of the Lord Jesus Christ, and garners the judgment of God against it. But this bill, HR5, marks the day, if it passes in the Senate, it will mark the time when religious persecution becomes legal in these United States of America. And yes, you voted for it. You put the people in office, and they're pushing for it. And admit that, look, this, although you can't say you didn't hear it, at least you can't say you didn't hear it from SABWB. You did hear it, but you, for whatever reason, ignored it, and then went on to put these people in office. And now you have an opportunity to right that wrong. You have an opportunity to right the thing that is now fashioned as a point of persecution against you. I told you that Gina Johnson did an expert PowerPoint presentation of it on the 25th, this past Thursday. Did an excellent job of it. We have captured it, and we've put it on our website. On the backside, where our partners can go, you'll see an excerpt of it on our social media platforms before the week is out. But the entire thing is going to be on the backside of the website for our partners to access. And if you're a partner, you can download it. You can learn from it. You can have little studies at your house about it. You can fill the community with the knowledge of the things like that Gina Johnson put together and others. I got this that I'm reading from you now, to you, from another dear African American female involved in business. Her name is Sheila, and she sent this to me. I sent a note back to her that we had already had the thing last Thursday. We're on this thing. We understand what HR5 will do. And I want you to understand that it will put the principles of God in direct contradiction with the principles of man. And you will have to make a choice whether you will capitulate to that or whether you will stand strong in it. If you will stand strong in it, you're going to face persecution. Legal persecution will be the law of the land if HR5 passes out of the Senate. And yes, again, you voted for the people that put this forward. If you voted uh, for the Democratic Party and people, those people put it forward. Not everybody in the party is a radical socialist, and not everybody in the party is antithetical to the things of God. But there are a lot of people who are at power positions in the party who are, and therefore they've put these things forward. You have to count on now your own Democratic colleagues coming to bat for what they know to be decent and right. You have to count on, if you're voted for the Democratic Party, contact your lawmakers and tell them don't vote for this HR5. It's already going out of the House now, and it's now in the Senate. Call your Democratic representatives in the Senate and tell them to turn down HR5. Get on the phone tomorrow. Get your families to do it. This passing of HR5 will mark the beginning of the legal persecution of the body of Christ in the United States of America, and it will happen unless you and I do something about it. Force faith-based organizations and their employees to hire people who are not in sync with them in their belief. It threatens religious freedom and free speech, evidencing a blatant hostility toward religion. HR5 would explicitly remove the protection of the Religious Freedom Restoration Act. That's called RFRA, the Religious Freedom Restoration Act. It says in HR5 that one cannot bring RFRA up as a defense against anything that is included in the Equality Act. It says it in the act itself. You cannot bring the Religious Freedom Restoration Act up as a matter of combating what is said in this Equality Act. Sexual orientation, gender identity being protected classes. You can't bring the Religious Freedom Restoration Act up as a defense. What does that say? It kicks out, it sets in motion persecution for the church in America. And I'm not sure, just let me say this, I'm not sure that we don't need persecution in the church in America. Persecution kind of clarifies things for us. It kind of makes us make the decisions that we would hesitate to make otherwise. For God I'll live, or for God I'll die. We've sung those songs. Now it may be time for us to walk that walk, and instead of just talking that talk. We like the words of Esther. I'm going to see the king. If I die, I die, but I'm going to see the king. We are coming to that time with things like HR5 that causes the church to have to make those kinds of decisions. And the church may shrink drastically in size when those who are put to the test are unwilling to take the offense of the cross, as Paul puts it. If you can't take the offense of the cross, you will mutate into a more palatable brand of Christianity. Let me encourage you to do this. Go to our website, get the full display, get the full PowerPoint presentation given by Gina Johnson on March 25th on HR5 and what it means to you. Of course, it jeopardizes girls' and women's athletic sports and educational opportunities. I can't believe that a biological male, because he claims to be a female, can participate in female sport. He's bigger, he's stronger. It is unfair to put a biological male in any kind of competition with a biological female, where strength and all those things and speed, a lot of that time, a lot of those things are concerned. It closes out the competitive edge for a lot of women who can stand against other women but cannot compete against a man, where their strength and those kind of athletic prowess are concerned. It's unfair. This HR5 talk about equality. It is very unequal to women. It delves out a serious inequality to women. Also, it allows a man who is biologically deemed himself as a woman, needing only to say that he is a woman, There's no scientific proof that he can render, because he can't render any scientific proof that he's a woman. But he can say it, and if he says it, he's allowed to use women's facilities, showers and dressing rooms. You saw this stuff going on at the state level. HR has lifted it to the federal level now, seeking to make this thing final and to bring a level of chaos into the country that is just unheard of. What do you do with insurances with a man whose rate is different, a person whose rate is different based on their gender, their life expectancy? Well, you got to go with what he says he is, and you got to adjust your insurance rates as a result of that. All of this stuff that just becomes so unnecessary when HR5 becomes the law of the land, if it ever should, and I hope that it does not. Okay, so I'm going to end the HR5 there. I'm going to ask you to be on the lookout in your social media platforms this week. I'm going to give a little snippet of Gina's presentation, and I'm going to give the whole thing on the backside of our website for you partners. And I hope tonight I gain hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of brand new partners to SABWB. This will be the place. It is the place where influencers from every position, race, and perspective come together to build trusting relationships and to work on both the value and the implementation of principles that shape the culture. We're going to shape the culture. You and I are going to do it together, and I'm glad to be working in it with you. Let me just talk briefly now about Fix SA. Fix SA, again, is riding on the coattails of the trial of this man who mercilessly put his neck on the knee on the neck of George Floyd and kept it there until he suffocated and died. It was brutal and senseless. And there have been actions of others that were also brutal and senseless in the way that they treated black victims, male and female. The lady who was beat up in prison and later died. All kinds of stuff. Racism is alive in the country, and it's one of the most damnable things that could take place to a people. And you're talking about to the same people who for 244 years suffered slavery, and the same people who for another 100 years was oppressed by Jim Crow, and for the same people who have now had to deal with this clandestine kind of racism, name slurs, and all this kind of stuff. And there is a burden on the back that is no longer willing to be borne, and people see it. Certain manipulators, certain social architects see that and know that about Black America, and will now seek to manipulate us based on those feelings. But I think that as we come together, I do think this about the body of Christ in San Antonio, really all over the globe. But we're going to start right here in the city of San Antonio. We will overcome it. To steal a phrase from Dr. King, we will overcome. This time, it's not the outward, it's not the segregationalists that arose in the South. This time, it's the segregationalists that have a different face. This time, it's the segregationalists that will smile in your face on one side of BLM and then promote you, put a knife in your back on the other side of BLM. This is the segregationalist that says they love you and put policies into place that stop you from moving ahead as a people and oppress you, and all the while claiming that they're the only answer for you. Our answer does not lie in a man or in a group of men. Our answers don't lie in a government, except the government of heaven. Our answers lie with God. And as God impresses us with wisdom and understanding and gives us knowledge to come together, to work together, to see the betterment of the good of our own culture and people move forward in this city, then we're able to come into synchronization with people who are not Black, the whites, the browns, the yellows, the reds, to come together. That's why SABWB is called SABWB, Black, White, and Brown. It doesn't exclude the red and the yellow. My friend Doug Stringer in Houston said, "What? No yellow?" And red, the Native American. You'll see that our logo, which we have a new logo now, includes all of that. We must come together, and we must lift a voice that is united, and let that voice be everything that it needs to be to break the another round of oppression off the shoulders of African American people, and that we put religion more in our heart and mind than we do in our feet and hands, as Dr. King says, and we'll change the world together. We'll change the city, and we'll change the world. I'm so grateful for your being with me tonight. Now, I want to just go back to that clip that I showed you at the beginning, because I want this to be the epitaph of HR5 and Fix SA. Fix SA is not a reallocation of funds. It is a defunding of the police department. You're going to see signs, what SABWB has done up until now. We got 100 signs. We want 500 to get them manufactured and get them out on the street. The sign said, "The blue needs you." When you pick up the phone, dial 911, you want the blue to come to you. Now the blue needs you. And that sign should go in your yard. Those of you who will be joining us at our grand opening on Friday, if you don't have one already, you'll be able to get one at our SABWB office. And we want to put out 500. So, and that whole project, the material and the personnel cost involved is about $7,500. Some of you listening to me can just go ahead and write that off tonight. You can do it by going to 84321. That's the text number. Text to that number, 84321. Text that entire amount, 7500, then space SABWB. And you'll put the resources in our hand as early as the next couple of days. And a few days after that, we'll have signs in hand, and they'll be going up all over the city. This is quick action. This is purposeful. You want to see your money work. You want to see those thousands of dollars that you know need to go to proper places to do expert work. This is a place you can give it. Just put 7500 space SABWB and text it to 84321, and we'll make sure that those signs defending, not defunding, the police department will be up in the communities that you drive through and see it. There are several signs that's going up now. We pray for the blue. We back the blue. This one says the blue needs you. All of this to saturate our environment so that we know while the police department does need reform, it does not need to be defunded. There was something hideous in the news some months ago about this officer who claimed himself that he had fed to a homeless man a sandwich with feces in it, human feces. Do you know who turned that guy in for saying that? It wasn't somebody who got the sandwich, the homeless man who got the sandwich and puked and vomited and then went and told somebody that police officer did that to me. No, it wasn't somebody who saw that happen to him and went and told the police either. The person who turned that police officer in because he said that he did it was other police officers. They turned him in because to have such a guy on the force makes them look bad. So based on his words, they went and turned him in. Now, the person that he said he fed the sandwich to never came forward. There's been no rumor of it in the community. It was more than likely stupid bravado on the part of the police who did not deserve to wear that uniform. That same police officer became guilty of another offense that his fellow officers also turned him in for, and as a result of the two, that police officer was let go. He's no longer on the force. You didn't hear that. What you would hear, though, is that the union will take a police officer who did something like that and bring him back on the force. As I said, you take a position many times based on the slant of information that you've received, either from the news media or other sources, or the lack of information. So if we can close the gap, if we can help you close the gap between the slant and the lack of information and the truth, we want to be there to do that for you as well. SABWB will do a news type of service for the city of San Antonio as we're funded to do that. Maybe you're sitting out there today and you're saying, I knew that there was some journalists who still had journalistic integrity, who could get into a place and get the real information and get it to us in a spot locally in our own city where we could find out the truth of really what happened. We are working up the budget for that, but I'm talking about vans with our news logo, credentials for our journalists, moving them into this arena to be able to get the truth to you and me so that we don't have to rely on slanted information upon which we make our decisions or gain our perspectives or make decisions about things. So if you're out there and you want to lay $15,000 or $20,000 down for just the van itself, and then another $20,000 or $30,000 for the equipment on the inside of it, and all of that, do it. Go ahead and do it. You can. We will put it to use, and we'll put our budget online so people can see it and know that you're not that your goods are not and your funds are not being squandered and not being treated like they should not be treated. In fact, I have 2 staff members at SABWB. I don't currently draw a salary from them because I'm still getting up on our financial feet to be able to do that. But I do have 2 staff members that I have to pay. They don't work for free. So thank you again for your partnership. I just want to thank you. You can become our partner just by going to sabwb.org and follow a couple of quick prompts there, and you'll become our partners. Or you can do the quick give to 84321, put the $7,500 that you want to sponsor for the signs and SABWB or whatever amount. And what I recommend is the $10 thing, because if we get the SABWB the $10 space SABWB, then we're going to assume that you want to become our monthly partners. And it only takes about 1,500 of us in the city of San Antonio to fully fund our organization for the entire year. That's about 180,000 for the year. And so as you and I move forward with that, it allows us to grab a hold of what needs to happen in our city and make it happen for the cause of Christ. As we transcend, we're going above normal limits. We're going beyond the normal limits, and we're going to take this conversation into the realm of the spirit. And there we're going to find this unity, and there we'll find aid and favor, and we'll shape the culture here in the city of San Antonio, because SABWB is that place where influencers from every race, position, and perspective come together or assemble for 2 purposes: to build trusting relationships and to work together on both the value and implementation of principles that shape the culture. We're going to shape the culture together, and you help it happen. So thank you for it in advance of you doing it. Thank you for your monthly partnership, and also thank you for giving to these specific projects. All right, blessings to you. I will see you right here next Tuesday for Transcendent. Blessings to you. Bye-bye now. Make sure you share this on your own social media platforms. Bye-bye.